All right, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Everybody hear me? What's going on? All right. I hope you guys can hear me. My mechanics, it's not going to be stellar. But yeah, I'm hoping you guys can hear me. Now, I got requested. This video got requested because of all that's going on. So let's go. Now let me say this. Let me tell you about the stories that I know about. Okay, you know what? You know what, Copper? You know what? Let's start there. Let's start there. Now, I just watched the walk-off of one of the, let me get this name right, Kenny Smith. Yeah, what's going on? Peace, Lady G. So Kenny Smith walks off, and because of Black Jacob. Okay, I don't know who that is. Forgive me. But Kenny Smith walks off, right? And Chris Webber, delivers a speech. Now, I listened to some of it. Now, I do know about, I believe it's Minnesota shooting, where the man is paralyzed. So I do know about that shooting. There was a shooting before that, too. It was a couple days before that, and they killed that guy. And he was trying to get into a convenience store. They killed him. There was also another murder a week ago. I care about you, Tone. That's all that matters to me. Much love. I care about you guys, too. There was another murder where the two guys, Jacob Blake. Is this the guy who was paralyzed? Lady G? Well, there's another murder where two guys were pulled over, and the one guy ran, and the police shot and killed him. Okay, yeah. Thank you. So that didn't happen too long ago. So there are several police shootings, and to my knowledge, two of them are classified as murders now. Of course, the police go on leave. Now, let's get to the Jacob Blake story. Here's what little I know about it. He was breaking up a fight between two women, and while he was breaking up the fight, the police were called, and then a conversation and confrontation ensued, and guns were drawn, and he went to his car, and the police followed him around his car and then shot him in the back when he opened his door. So I don't know if the police thought he was going to reach for something, and I did do a little bit on this video already, so I don't mean to be too redundant, but I pointed out the fact that there were so many cops, right there that they could have easily stopped him. He's walking away from you, so he isn't a threat to you. He's not walking towards someone, to threaten them, and he didn't have anything in his hand. Somebody said he had a knife, but he's walking away from you, so why didn't you just tase him and knock him down, which is why the tasers were implemented. Now, I'm going to pause right there on that story and talk about another video I've seen. So we're going to get back to that one because that's where the most emotions are coming out of on the Blake story. And God forbid if he actually... As a matter of fact, let's stay on that, but let's look at what has happened since then. So there were protesters who were in Minnesota. The police came out in force with armored cars, SWAT, We know that there has been more National Guards have been deployed to that area, like 1,500 National Guards. And we know that there have been the militia has came out. I was wondering personally when the militia was going to show up. I'm sorry, it's hot in here. I have to run this fan. It's hot, you guys. I have to run my fan. My AC is not working. So if you guys can still hear me, just say I can still hear you and everything's okay. The cop walked behind him. I saw that because he wanted to shoot him. They really get off on that, which is why they do it. Yeah, and they have no fear of us. Well, okay, so we got the militia, all right? We know that there's like 12 different militia out there who are ready to gun people down. So the police, I saw a video where the police were telling the militia, you know, we're glad that you guys are out here. And one of the guys here we're talking to ended up shooting 2 people and killing them. Let me look at the story to get that name. And he was a 19-year-old. I'm just trying to get this all down, you guys. Because there's so much that happened. You know, when you asked me to do this, I was like, yeah, I'll talk about it, but it's so much information. But I had to actually go and look up some stuff first. He's 17-year-old Wisconsin shooter charged with 2 counts of murder. Okay, my system is trying to update. Charged with 2 counts of murder. I don't know what his name is, but he shot 3 people and he killed 2 of them. So that happened. I don't know what his name is. Yeah, the 17-year-old. Yeah. So there's also a video of him talking to the police before that, and the police were like, we're glad you're there. But I don't think the police thought he was going to shoot anyone. But him and his buddies were heavily armed. They meant business. And I watched when the shooting went down. He didn't, you know, he looked like he was in a scuffle with somebody. But you're in a scuffle with an AR-15. And people are running from you. And if people are running from you and then you start randomly firing, it didn't seem like he knew who he was shooting at. There were people scattering like roaches. And from what I saw, it, you know, those bullets didn't have any name on them. They were pretty much to say, hey, I have an AR-15 and I'm getting my butt kicked. You know, laying down on the ground, you know, my pride's going to kick in and I'm going to have to do something. And that's what happened. Jacob Blake looks like he had a cell phone in his hand. Oh, he had a cell phone in his hand. I didn't think he had a knife either. Because, you know, one girl in the video was saying he had a knife, and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Because he was standing face to face with the police at first. Plus, the police would have called out and would have said, drop the knife. And I didn't hear that. So, you know, I was like, nah. He's paralyzed now. So, you know, may the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost touch him so he can get his walking back. But he's paralyzed now. Heck, they might, you know, Martin Luther King him and finish him off just so he doesn't say anything. I mean, let's be for real or be for Roni. Martin Luther King did not die because of the gunshot. He died because of the doctors at the hospital. They're the ones who killed Martin Luther King. And they said, let that N-word die. And they let him die. Hospitals are not safe. Yeah. Spine is severed. When you get shot 7 times in the back, think of the possibilities. But when we look at that young man firing off those shots, we also have video of people who were protesting some, you know, suburban area, and the white people didn't appreciate it. So they did, you know, what they do when they see a bunch of black people. They got scared. And 2 men came out. I think it was a father and son. Again, we've seen this before. Armed. One had a shotgun and shot a man right in the face. And the guy is sitting in the, they're videoing the whole thing. And the guy's sitting in the car bleeding. He's like, I got shot in the face. I think they shot him with buckshot or something like that. So he got shot. And the police did not want to arrest the man who did it. And the guy is standing there talking to the police saying, are you going to arrest him? They say, well, he's being detained right now. It's just like this man shot innocent people in the face. I know, but we're talking to him. No, see, same thing with Dylan Roof. They arrested Dylan Roof and took him to Burger King after he murdered 8 people in a church. I mean, how much less fear of God do you have? You come in with supposedly God's house and murder God's people while they're worshiping, and they welcomed you in, and you murder them in the house of God. Like it's nothing. See, what we're experiencing is a buildup of empathy, or of non-empathy, excuse me, of callousness, of evil. And, you know, it's not like we should be surprised because God talks about this stuff in the Bible. It's going to get worse, people. I mean, it's going to get worse. Heck, they were blowing up babies, black children, back when Chicago and the move bombed. They was blowing up little girls back then. So don't expect them to care about us now. It's just not going to happen. Heck, they're still hanging black men who done nothing. Don't think that the police are going to all of a sudden become nice cops. And listen, there are some nice cops, but the police organization is tainted. And I'm going to say this for the record. I don't believe the police organization should be defunded. I think it should be broken down and rebuilt. Because it is clearly a cesspool of evil where men and women, Shelby, can get away with murder. And they're not held to the same standard as a citizen. And there is nothing glorious about that. There's nothing equal about that. And the people who are allowing them to walk, the lawyers, the doctors, the EMTs, and everybody who lies and bears false witnesses, the judges, you know, all of them who allowed this to happen, they are all just as guilty. When they listen to these stories of how these, you know, armed, like in the Breonna Taylor incident, they have video of these guys breaking down the door and going into the door, and then, you know, people running out, kids running out, scared, and, you know, they say these officers are all unidentified. We've seen this over and over and over before. A bunch of unidentified, heavily armed officers, there's no competition, going into the wrong address without just cause. And they don't have a search warrant. They just yelling search warrant. And there was supposed to be some type of, listen, you know, they raided her house because they said that they were growing weed. They were growing marijuana. Wait a minute. You got white people growing and selling marijuana. I mean, you go to Denver and you can walk into a convenience store and it's full of marijuana. And they're just, and this is not medical marijuana. Yeah, I believe it too. It needs to be abolished and revamped. But this is not medical marijuana. These are people who are selling marijuana. And it's legal in that state. It should be legal everywhere. And so this is why they raided their house with guns. Because they thought that her house was full of dangerous drug dealers, but it was full of children. Scared. Children are traumatized for the rest of their life. And we have a woman who was shot 28 times. And those officers are still eating tabbouleh salad with their wife and children. They're not going to learn until it happens to them. Until their house gets raided and their children die or their wife dies. Listen, this is never going to be a story where we're going to see justice. We don't know who Breonna Taylor's killers are. We don't know. And even the killers that we've seen, like Darren Wilson, he's been tried 3 times. 3. He got away with $256,000 after losing his pension. And that came from the American people. George Zimmerman killed a teenager because he said they always get away. I don't know about anybody else, but listen, I'm a man of prayer. I believe that the Holy Ghost is everywhere. God is everywhere, watching everything. But the Holy Ghost can't sit here. And I'm going to be very careful when I say this because I'm afraid of the Holy Ghost. But the Holy Ghost cannot convince me to accept it without being angry. He can tell me to accept it because this is my reality. But he can't say don't be angry. He can't say don't have the urge to get even or want to react. He can't tell me that. God cannot tell me that. Because this is slaughter. This is treating us like animals. There is no rhyme or reason. Now, there are people saying, okay, the guy who ran and got shot in the back, he should have just complied with the police. And this wouldn't have happened. There are 2, retorts to that. One is white people, they constantly comply with the police. We know that's nowhere near the truth. We just saw a video where a man walked a police officer, female, walked her around the car. She's backing up, gun loaded, pointing at this man. And he's walking toward her, telling her, I will kill you. These are his words to her, and then calling her the B word. This is not like Shelby when she killed Terrence, and Terrence was disoriented and walking away from her, and she shot and killed him from behind and said, he did not obey my orders. He didn't obey my commands. He was walking away from you. He was nowhere near a threat. And you shot and killed him and got off because he did not obey your commands. And we're watching plenty of police officers. When it comes to white people, these white people are coming at them. They're fighting them. They got weapons in hand. I saw one video where a guy was surrounded by a police officer. He had a revolver in his hand, and it was a standoff. And he's in the wide open, sitting there with a revolver in his hand. And they were sitting there like they didn't know what to do until somebody shot the revolver out of his hand, and then they jumped on him. I ain't never seen them give a black man that kind of courtesy. Listen, it's just going to get worse. For those of you who believed at one time that the police are not racist, you can just go ahead and throw that out the door. We saw that when the riots first started and they were taking black people and pushing white people away. That's the good thing about the riot. It's a good thing. It woke us all up. Even those who were somewhat blind. It woke them up. Now you know. Take the blinders off. A little hard for me to read this. Hold on a second. It's happened plenty of times when when they did comply, and it's just what they do. Right. Listen, there is no complying with the police and then living if they don't want you to. We have the one 18-year-old, he was shot in the back of the car. And he had 2 sets of handcuffs on him. And they shot and killed him. And their only excuse was he had a white powdery substance on him. So all of a sudden, the speculation is he was a drug dealer. So he deserved to die. There's no due process. This was their only, that's all they said. He had a white powdery substance on him. And because of that, they murdered him in the back of a car. And mind you, let me tell you something. This is a story that happened years ago. When they murdered him, he had 2 white friends with him. And you know what they were doing? They were smoking weed. And the police came up on them while they were smoking weed and told the 2 white kids to beat it. I told the black kid, you're under arrest for smoking weed, buddy. Put 2 sets of handcuffs on him behind his back. And then jumped in the back of the car with him and blew his head off. He had a white powdery substance. He was a cocaine trafficker. Sorry, somebody's trying to message me. He was a cocaine trafficker, according to the police, and therefore gives them every right to shoot down this person who was unarmed and an adolescent. He had dreads. He was dark-skinned, had dreads. I don't know if you guys remember that story. But yeah, he was guilty, so there was no due process for him. And they murdered that kid and got away with it. Like it was nothing. All right, I'm going to have to get off of Facebook. All right, so sorry about that, guys. Nonetheless, sorry, I broke my concentration. So these shootings that we're seeing of protesters, it was only a matter of time before that was going to happen. Now, the police talking to the 17-year-old protester before the incident, the same night, the police say, hey, we appreciate that you guys are out here. I didn't really look at that as the police were doing something bad then. I'm going to tell you why. Because we have had black protesters who are in the militia, and they have been protecting their area, which they should, from mobsters and people coming in and smashing up their food, areas where they buy food, because tomorrow you still have to buy food. None of us are hunter and gatherers. It's just not. We go shopping at Kroger's. It just is what it is. So you got to protect, where you feed yourself and your family. I get that 100%. I don't have an issue with that happening. People were trying to make something of it. I don't have an issue with that. I say protect your home, protect your hometown, protect your livelihood. Because if you're hungry, it's going to get really bad. We've already seen some of that. We've seen the tip of the iceberg of that. But the responsibility of carrying an AR-15 or any firearm, you would think that this was embedded in you when you went and got your license, right? Here's the problem. Oh, let me try to read this. Here's the problem. For one, everybody shouldn't have a gun. And I know it's your Second Amendment, I believe. The cop who shot Jacob Blake was just like the cop who killed George Floyd. I made a point of that. And Blake, that's exactly what I said. He had no expression. The demonic spirit took over. They had no emotion, feeling whatsoever, and they were leading to him. For one, there's no doubt about that. Anybody who can easily commit an atrocity is definitely filled with an evil spirit demon. But I bring up the point that another police officer who saw the George Floyd video called George Floyd an actor. You know, as far as conspiracies go, I'm not a heavy conspiracy theorist. I will say this. I know that we are being manipulated. We saw this by what the FBI did. And the FBI is no group of innocent people. They're just as treacherous as anyone. But we saw what the feds did recently, how they were snatching people up and just taking them away. We know that that is unethical and almost unbelievable, but I don't know if we've heard from any of those people who were snatched. Some are protesters. We saw them snatch black people and leave white people. We saw this. We know that the police have damaged their own vehicles. We know that they have been told to leave rocks out so it can create more confusion. We know when the protests started that the police were egging on people. They don't want peace. So there is a bigger picture here somewhere. This is driving towards something. So when we see the George Floyds and the Blake shootings and the blank faces on their face, it looks like they're doing what they were told to do. That's what it looks like. It looks like they're in deep. Now we know that the police have to have certain arrest numbers, right? So they go out and arrest even children if they have to. They have to have their numbers up. We know that they're making 100,000. Some are making 200 some odd thousand. We know this. Read this comment real quick. The same demon spirit they had back in the slavery's brother, the others, well, they never left. So we know that they have to get these numbers up. We know the people who own the jail systems and the banking systems, we know that they are all the one and the same. We're well aware of this. And we know that they're also manipulating the presidential elections because I went over this over and over again. The common people, our choice of presidency is not recognized. There are people who pick who is going to be president and they become president. It doesn't matter about the popular vote. That's why people say you should go out and vote for the president. No, I'm not wasting my time again. I did that twice. I'm not doing it again. Now, local voting, I believe that's more of the populace. But when it comes to the presidency, no. So there are puppet masters who are pulling all the strings. The president is not one of them. He's not. There is a system that we're in. This system is ran by warmongers as cosmos. And they've been doing this for thousands of years. We know that Osama bin Laden is still alive. We know that, 9/11 and all those and Building 6, that building just would not have fell because of the structure of it was, messed up because of a fire. It just is not even possible. Not a building up to code, and we know that building was up to code. We just know that AIG knows it, and we know it. But here's what else we know. If they can kill like this, with just a blank face, like it doesn't matter. They could hang Sandra Bland and no officer get reported. No officer, they sleep well. They just, like she wasn't even there. Like she didn't matter. These officers are doing what they're told. But they're not doing it by what the public tells them. Listen, our tax dollars, okay, for one, The government said that you don't have to register your vehicle. It's unethical. But if you ride around with an unregistered vehicle, you're going to get harassed. But the truth is, you don't have to register your vehicle. Now, you can go to court and fight that. But the police are going to harass you and harass you and harass you. And they know that you don't have to register that vehicle. But the money that goes into the police gang comes from so many places, comes from so many areas that we pay into. And we willingly pay into this because at one point in time, we thought that the police organization was a good idea. But now we are 100% clear that there is a need for law enforcement, but the law enforcement that we are paying into does not serve everyone equally. It is candid. We are not all the same. We're not. We're not all treated the same. We are, even if you have millions of dollars, we've seen football players going to jail who've done nothing, basketball players going to jail who've done absolutely nothing. It doesn't matter. It's not a class thing. It's just not. Read this comment. Donald Trump Jr. was higher than a at the RNC. I mean, he was high as hell standing there with those red tears in his eyes. I'm sorry, I didn't even see the RNC. I've actually been to one when I was working for the House of Representatives, and I never seen such a contrast in my whole life. I went to the DNC because at that time I was working for the Democrats. The unique part about my experience in the Ohio House of Representatives, as a legislative aide for 4 different representatives, I worked for 2 for the Democrats and 2 for the Republicans. But I worked for the Republicans first. I was a legislative aide for the Republicans first. And I started off as a temp, you know. I caught it on the news. I don't watch it more. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, that's cool. I like the fact that you had information about it because, you know, I don't watch those things. But nonetheless, one was held in a bar. The other one was held in a 5-star hotel. And they covered 4 floors. News. It was most popular people in and out of town. It was a huge, huge, huge party where millions of dollars went into that one night. DNC, and a couple sodas. It was bad. It was bad. It was terrible. I just couldn't believe my eyes. I couldn't. I was like, this is unreal. The money the Republicans have. And of course, you know, during the time, you know, well, shortly after that, you know, Governor Taft ripped off Ohio for $20 million. You know what I'm saying? So that's what they do. You know what I mean? But yes, don't expect things to change for the better. Now, let's get back to Blake and what I'm going to speculate. I'm going to speculate that Blake is going to live for a short time. I want him to live for as long as he should. But I'm going to speculate that he's not going to make it very long. I won't even give him a year. I won't. And that's sad. I'm giving him a year is generous. I'm going to tell you why. Because if it bleeds, it leads. It's how the news looks at everything. We are looking at a fire that has been continuously burning since the George Floyd incident. To my knowledge, there hasn't been a protest this long. We've been protesting for a while, but The George Floyd protests kicked off all over the world. For one, they were already protesting. But it seems like every time normalcy is a threat, chaos must ensue. And this is when you bring in your actors. Whether the blacks are in on it and the police are in on it, this is where you bring in your actors. And some people say, this isn't real, that's real. Well, what do I always say to what's real and what's not real? It doesn't matter. What's real is the reaction to what people see and what people think. That's what's real. Coronavirus isn't real. Well, what's real is you have to wear a mask everywhere you go. That's what's real. Okay, there are mandates all over the country now. That's real. That has disrupted your day. You can't go into any store without one. That is very, very real. Okay, so try it. See what happens. See if it's real to your life. Go to your local Piggly Wiggly and see what happens. You'll see people walking around with a mask, and somebody eventually will confront you and say, hey, we're glad you're here. But we would like it very much if you would go ahead and wear a mask. Now, we have some for sale over here, but if you're just going to stop here for a few minutes, we could just give you one. This actually happened to me a couple days ago. We could just give you a mask if you're just going to be here for a short time. That's what they did. And they escorted me over to an area and handed me one of these, blue surgical standard issues. That's a standard issue. That is a standard. You understand what I'm telling you? This right here is part of your dress uniform every day. If you're traveling, if you leave outside the confines of your house, this must be a part of it. Now, for some of you who just don't believe that things are real, go ahead and travel without one of these. Go into a convenience store. See how that works out for you. Just go ahead. See how many times you're going to go in there before somebody approaches you. Very nicely. And ask if you have one of these. Not even an ID. If you got one of these, this is real. This is tangible. This is very real. What's happening, the protest, the black people getting killed and shot and all this, that's real. That's very, very real. Whether George Floyd died or not, I think he did, it's very, very, very real. Whether these actors or whoever are in on whatever, what's happening is people are really dying from what they see. Lori Loughlin only received 2 months jail time when a black woman got years for sending her child to a school. Yeah, the rich lady to a school out of her school. Yeah, she was using her father's address. Yeah, she wanted to send her kid to a better school. And what's really something is that black woman thought that was legal-ish. She's like, I wonder if this is legal. It's like, it's your father's address. Why would it not be legal? You live with him now. But I think that's where the waters got muddy. I don't know too much about the case. I'm only speculating. I think it's, I think that there has to be a transfer of the school. And I think that's what got her in trouble. She did not properly transfer. But your whole point is this rich white woman only got 2 months that she might do. And a black woman got 20 years. And yes, it is unfair and completely outrageous. It's completely outrageous. I don't think there should be jail time for that at all. I don't know what the punishment should be, but who are they stealing from? Who did that little black girl steal from? Was it a white child that couldn't go to school because she fill the spot. Like, her father had an address within the same school area. So why is this a murder? Listen, second-degree murder carries a 20-year charge. This is manslaughter. Manslaughter doesn't even carry such a heavy sentence. Manslaughter, voluntary and or involuntary. Matter of fact, you look it up. Let me just look it up in Ohio. I'm just curious. Hello. See if she's gonna cooperate with me today. See if Siri. We're gonna ask Siri. I love to ask Siri stuff.
Good evening.
How many years in jail can you get for involuntary manslaughter?
Here's what I found.
How many years can you get? Let me ask this. Turn this down a little bit. What's the maximum amount of time for involuntary?
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
What's the maximum amount of jail time for involuntary manslaughter? I don't even think it's 20. I know it's not 20 years. She's still thinking. Anyways. So I know it's not 20 years. So it's preposterous. Remember the one lady who fired off a warning shot? You try to give her 20 years? We know that they are trying and succeeding by putting Black people in jail for extended sentences for ridiculous reasons. They're trying to give them life. Well, they're not trying, they are. And when I see a Black man who gets out after 30 years of his life have been exhausted, every single one of those men look the same, broken. They do. They look exhausted. All the fight has been taken out of them. And some of them might even admit it. But you know, our pride, men, you know, Black men, we got our pride. But you can't tell me that you're not broken. You can't tell me that you were innocent and you just did 30 years time as an innocent person and that didn't break you. They all look broken. And it would break me too. It would just, because you, and listen, in some states, there are no reparations for that. They don't give you a dime. I've even seen one of the prosecutors come out and talk about how he set this person up and then had the nerve to try to apologize. You were putting it, remember they had the one lady, the forensic scientist lady who was doing all the DNA stuff. When they went to her for the DNA and she found all these men guilty. She was lying through her damn teeth. The system is set up to crush you. That's just it and that's all. We have to stop expecting better. We can't afford the heartbreak. We can't. I don't wake up every day some happy-go-lucky goofball because the Lord has if I'm silly, it's because I'm happy that I'm blessed in the Lord. I know I'm blessed. I done been through some things. I don't need the world to come crashing in on me again and again to understand that there is a God who has been blessing me. You don't have to convince me. I knew that when I was a child. Getting my ass kicked, literally. I knew that. Even though I'm catching butt whoopings from all kind of objects, that this is not normal. I knew that I was still blessed by God. That makes me joyful to know that my destination, is not this planet right here. This is not my final destination. That gives me joy. That gives me something to look forward to. That gives me a reason to smile or sing or whatever goofy things that I do. But to look at this world, because the world is in chaos. The world is in chaos. But to look at the world and through my eyes as a black man, something I cannot and will not and do not want to change, and think that the world's going to get better for me, I have lost that glitter in my eye a long time ago. That is not my reality. It's not. I can't celebrate that. I can't teach it. I can't tell any of the neighbors' kids this. I don't get on here and act like it's a thing. I can joke around and play with you guys and all this other stuff, but I do not look at this world and say, you know what? It'll get better. Because I don't believe that. Now, you can call me a pessimist. I'm a realist. You don't beat people down for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years and try to convince them that the next day, the next year, the next 100 years, it's going to all be just peaches and, cream and cookies. I don't think it ever will be. Even when God comes back and straightens things out. I've read the parts of the Bible where he talks about doing that. And in those parts, he still talks about people who don't obey him. So from the beginning of man to the end, before Adam was even walking this earth, and there were other people walking the earth. Adam was not the first man, I keep saying this. Those people were not celebrating God. They were not worshiping God. They were not doing what they were supposed to. They were causing chaos. They were doing wrong in the sight of God. This is a non-stop cycle. Here's what it is. And in order for this cycle to stop, you have to vacate this planet. That's just it. I realize that America, as troublesome as it is not as bad as other countries. I don't think it's the best country on the planet. But it's not as bad as other countries. I keep bringing up Germany because Germany was good to me. I didn't get called the N-word. Nobody noticed me. Nobody cared. Can't say that about France. Can't say that about England. Of course, I wasn't called these words in England or France, but I knew that there was tension there. I understood that 100%. Germany, not so much. Can't say, I ever had a bad experience with a Russian. Just can't. So I'm saying that there are European countries that don't hate black people. There are. Read some more of your comments here. Sorry, guys, I'm tired. I had a full day of just bad business with what I do, and I'm just exhausted, and tomorrow's not going to be any easier because I have to move all of my equipment tomorrow in one fell swoop, so I'm going to be really beat. Okay. Let me read some more. Yes, that's what I mean totally. I'll wait to say right. If it was against the law, I would say her punishment should have been no more than community service. And that's what it should have been, community service. I don't think she should have been punished, but you're right, community service. And made an example of by uh, some sort of guidelines. There should have been some guidelines that were made aware to people in all school districts. And that's where I think they dropped the ball on that. They made her an example by giving her this hideous sentence, which is ridiculous. But there are, mothers and fathers who live in two different area codes, and there are split parenting, and you just can't toss somebody in jail for 20 years because now the daughter is going to school and living with the father. Like, dude, it just makes me wish I was a really damn good lawyer because I would have took that pro bono. I would have jumped state and been like, yo, I would have teamed up with somebody and been like, let's handle this because no, we just don't do that. That's ridiculous. And I would have sued, not the arresting officer because he's just a drone, he or she, but I would have sued the people who bring charges against her. I would have made an example out of them, but I would have sued them in federal court. I wouldn't have took it to appellate court and all this other stuff. I would have told them too, I'm going to take you to federal court. And we're going to make this known because we don't want to see this happen again. And then somebody's in jail for 20 and get her the hell out of jail. So that's what I would have done. I wouldn't have went after the police officers though, because in this case, the police officers were not wrong. They were doing what they were supposed to. They were following whatever written law that there was. But in this case, a lot of these laws were written so long ago. You know what I mean? And they were written for normal conditions. We are living in a time where the divorce rate is, 50-60% now. And it just goes up every year. It doesn't even take the divorce rate to go up a year. It doesn't take it a year to climb, 5-6%. It just doesn't. It's just more infidelity and the more divorce going on. It's ridiculous. And it's hitting everyone. So to for this to be a thing that lands someone in jail for murder is just so preposterous. So I would have took this on. And here's the thing. I would have made it a class action lawsuit because I'm betting a dime to a dollar there's somebody else going to experience this by default. They're going to experience this by default. So you're going to have people who are going to walk headlong into this knowing that this is an issue, and they're going to take their chances because of starvation. So when I grew up in a very poor family. We were literally starving twice a month. We were very hungry, so we had to go out and figure out ways to eat because there was literally no food in our cupboards. There was literally none. It was wiped out by us and the roaches, so it was ridiculous. So what we depended on was the school system and free lunch. Now, free lunch of, whatever they were giving us, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, those were the best goddamn peanut butter and jelly sandwiches I ever had in my damn life. And we knew it was generic bread, generic peanut butter, and generic jelly. But you couldn't tell us it wasn't the best damn. It wasn't Schweppes or Schwabels or whatever the fancy names is. It didn't come from, Spain or some fancy. It was the best because we were hungry. And when I got home, I knew there was nothing there. So I waited, had no choice but to wait till the next day to get something to eat. And sometimes when I was lucky, I could go to a friend's house. And of course, this is how the neighborhood actually bonded together because there was 5 projects where I grew up. They're all torn down now. And every single person in the project was on welfare. So what did we do when we ran out of food? We borrowed from somebody else. So we automatically have a bartering system. Can I borrow 2 eggs from you from here? Can I borrow some milk from you from here? Can I borrow some? And this is how people basically got to know each other. And this is how the system circulated and how you pretty much stayed alive until you got old enough to go out and make money yourself. Now, I'm sure some of you did the same thing, but that was my experience. That and, of course, other things that helped me out too, and my family. Jigglick's mom said she would pay for the cop who paralyzed her son. She would pray for him. Well, I'm gonna say something about that in a minute. I just wasn't feeling it. Remind me of. Okay, so let's talk about that. Black people are protesting in peace. The majority of us, besides the black militia, right? And even before Martin Luther King, we still, in Rosewood, we were trying to be a people of peace. We just wanted to be left alone. In Seneca Village, which is in New York, what happened? We were mixed there with 25% Irish, 75% black people who were slaves at one time, and we were thriving. So when they came and used public domain to kick us out, what did we want? We wanted to be left alone, right? When you look at Black Wall Street, and some woman said that a black man, said something to her, or whistled or looked. I think he looked at her, and this caused 3,000 people to die and Black Wall Street to be completely burned down. Before that even happened, the white kids would sit on the edge of the street that separated white and black and stare at the black kids and pretty much harass them. But what did we want? We wanted to be left alone. So when you hear a person who has been traumatized by the 240 million majority that is in this country and say, well, I pray for them, or can I give you a hug? This is something that has been built into us and beat into us. It is a staple in our life. You have people who are like you, I'm not going for it, like me, to hell with you. But it is still a fixture in our spiritual DNA. It has been beaten into us, whooped into us, stained into our brain to turn the other cheek and to love those who do wrong to us. So none of this surprises me, but it hurts. You're looking at a playing field that is uneven. And that's just the truth. Yeah, Germany is a cool place. But you're looking at this is an uneven playing field. There's not 240 million of us. There's 40 million of us. And the Latinos outnumber us. Just think how the Indians feel. There's only 2 million of them. There's 240 million white people. So just drink that in. When the militia had a calling to go down to Montgomery, where the KKK was started, and to march in their territory because the KKK said they're going to start killing people, and they did. But the black militia didn't realize that they were going to hang people like cowards. They weren't going to come out and just kill people. So the black militia had a call to arms on Facebook and every social media channel and said, let's go down there with our guns. You had maybe 100 or 2 show up. 100 or 2. I don't know what the number was. Out of 40 million black people, maybe 100. I remember a couple years ago where I forgot what city this happened in. I don't know if this was the Gaines woman But it happened along that around that time where gangs, where they shot her over. I don't know if you guys remember the story, but basically the police stopped her. She's in Chicago, I think. Police stopped her, said, "Listen, you don't have no tags on your car." She was like, thinking that she was practicing the same thing. I don't need to register my car because it's, the federal government said I didn't need to do it. But the police kept harassing her, and they stopped her, and pretty much harassed her and gave her a ticket, and she ignored the ticket. Of course, the ticket turned into a warrant. And before they went to her house, they had saw her on Facebook with a shotgun. So in their eyes, the normal police aren't showing up. So who showed up? The same people that showed up at Breonna Taylor's house. And they went in and they killed gangs. But the video that they had saw was like 2 weeks ago. She didn't even have that gun in the house. And they didn't give her a fighting chance anyway. But they also shot her 4-year-old child. Now, there was another shooting around that time, and I remember the mother or the grandmother saying, "You do not want to go to war." Because black people are like, "We want to go to war." And the mother is like, "No, you don't." Not even guerrilla warfare. They poisoned the water in Michigan. We know they're doing stuff to our food. We know this. But they poisoned the water on purpose in Michigan. You know the best way to beat an army is not to fight it. It's to cut off their supplies. Every general knows this. You cut off their supplies, they can't fight. You drag them into deep waters, and one way or another, you don't have to fire a shot. Napoleon lost because Napoleon went up north into the cold and he wasn't prepared for it and lost his whole army. And at one point, he tried to take over the world, according to him. He lost his whole army. They froze and starved. Tried to go up into Russia. I think it was Russia. Lost his whole army. You cut off their supplies. They have been cutting us off in one way or another. Financially, they've been cutting us off, been doing that, and I've lived through some of that. Medically, stuff they put into your food. Yeah. We are a standing army. But we can't even act like a standing army. A couple hundred people only showed up with guns in hand. We're so separate up here that we can't become a collective. And some blame it on Jim Crow laws. Okay, whatever. The fact is, we are a standing army. But we are still sorely outnumbered on a foreign land. Sorely. We couldn't pick a leader if we tried. We couldn't. Any leader we pick, we are going to get rid of that leader. Because somebody's going to say, this is not the way to do it. This is the way to do it. And that's going to cause a civil war. And we've seen this before during our time. Look at Rwanda. Two tribes who are the same people fighting because their nose is different. Or this is the lie that was told to them by the who? The Dutch. The same people who own the diamond mines. And has your children working next to their parents all day long, 10-hour days for $1 on land that belongs to you, digging up your riches and you getting none of it. God, And now the mines are empty. We have the numbers, but we don't know how to organize. Now you have in South Africa where they are telling white people get the hell out and committing heinous crimes towards white people in ways that are just unimaginable. I wouldn't even do it. But when you lived through apartheid and you saw what they did to those people and how they murdered them and took their land, you have a bunch of soldiers in South Africa who have no heart, no sympathy, and no love for white people. Not one. I'm not saying that's the way to go, but you're not going to match the white man's fury with yours and win. And they're not more superior than we are. I would say on an open battlefield, even numbers, even weapons, we'll take them. There's no doubt about that. Our eyesight's better, we're faster, we're stronger. But they got their properties too. They were manufactured for war. Now we know this in the book of Deuteronomy. We know what they were manufactured to do. So we have to understand that a lot of what is going on is not necessarily, well, a lot of what's going on is biblical. As a matter of fact, everything that's going on is biblical. You want to have a better understanding of it, go and read the Bible. It'll tell you what's going on. It'll tell you why they were created. God clearly illustrated how they were used when you look at, was it not Mount Ararat? That's where the boat was found. When before they went into Canaan, before they went into the land of Canaan, when they were marching around the mountain of, before they crossed the Red Sea, I don't know, I'm tired. But God illustrated who was in the mountains. These people were already in the mountains, and God illustrated why he used them. He said, do not go up and bother these people. Because God used them to kill off the giants that were living in that space. Remember when our people walking around for 40 days, not for 40 days, for 40 years? God was waiting till all of our warriors died off, and then he, moved them into a peaceful present. This is before Jerusalem was split up into half. Yeah. You gotta understand that. These people are bred for war. That's why they love it so much. They have creative ways of killing people. The most heinous and ununderstood ways of just wiping you out. And unless we're ready to see millions of us get wiped out, we don't have a standing chance. One, we're unorganized. Two, we're outgunned, severely outgunned. We just don't have a chance. But that's not what we're here for. Our time is coming. I'm going to read this. I'm getting ready to go, guys. I'm falling asleep. I'm so beat. Tell me, what's up, bro? You still trying to score that pound of herb we talked about? I don't know what you're talking about. Answer my call because I need to let Tyrone know ASAP. I don't know what you're talking about. Those demons, we have it wherever they go. This is very true, they will. Jacob, there were children of fools, children of base men they were viler than the earth. You gotta understand what you're dealing with. You gotta understand this. You gotta look at the creator and find out exactly what he did and why he and only he can stop this madness. This is not an accident. It's not. These people, and let's get this clear. These demons are not only in white people. And we can see what's going on all over America where black people are shooting each other over nothing. Don't think these demons are color specific. But the effort, once they get into your system, the mind state is color specific. Meaning there are just certain things that white people do that black people just don't do. Certain things that black people do that white people just don't do. White people aren't shooting each other like crazy. Black people, we get 40, 50 people shot in one weekend. 1 weekend. 49 people shot in Chicago. 1 weekend. You don't hear that about white people. You just don't. You don't. But it's the same evil. It's the same evil. Evil is evil, people. 49 people shot in 1 weekend. And what that one father say, about his 8-year-old girl? They got shot because they crossed the wrong street in their car. And the mother was making a U-turn and her little girl got shot and killed and was dead in the back of her car. And the father said, "You killed your own." You think they cared? You think that stopped anything? Didn't stop anything. Black people still killing each other. Right. I felt the wrath of black people's demons too. Don't understand it. I didn't come here for you. I'm not interested in fighting with you. And they're going to pay too for what they've done. I'm not getting away with anything because they're black. God's a black man, so I can do what I want. I don't know where you read that at. No, punish you more. Because you knew better. You ignored what your mother, grandmother, grandfather, granddad taught you. You threw it out the window because you wanted to be popular. You wanted to be popping. Instagram. Well, you went out to a basketball court, got into it with another young man. Your pride got in the way. The young man started walking away. You pulled out a gun and shot him in the back of the head. This really did happen. And then went and got in court, before his sentences and tried to explain away that, all the witnesses and all this other stuff that, you didn't get your, a fair say. And the judge was like, I don't care what you have to say. You shot a man in the back of the head that was walking away from you. That's for the same age, 20. He had his whole life ahead of him. And you shot him in the back of the head as he was walking away from you. And there's some excuse for that? We have to be careful. We have to be careful. Because we want to say black people should not be going through these things. And white people are evil. But you have to understand that there is a level of evil in all races. And there's a level of good in all races. You can't, there are some people who will say, no, everybody who's white is bad. I say, get away from me with that. I can't do that. I cannot live my life that way. I can't digest that. I won't accept that theory. Because black people have done more harm to me than white people have. I'm more afraid of black people. Listen, my neighbors are leaving because some young black people moved in. And they openly carry M16s or AR-15s. Just walking down the street with it. We've never seen this before. I've been living here for 10 years. Open, they make sure you know. There's no white people coming around here doing that. These are black people staring at you hard for no reason. Me mugging you, knowing they got a pistol on their head with an extended clip. Every time you're close to them, they get talking about how many bullets they got. That's evil. There's nobody here a threat to you. I'm 53 years old. What do I want with you? Nobody here is a threat to you. But just to want that kind of energy, that is evil. I come the only way my parents taught me. I come in peace. They gave me vinegar when I was thirsty, so to speak. I'm not sure what that means. All right, I gotta go. I'm tired. Stay in prayer. God loves you. If you need to arm yourself, arm yourself. But do it the right way. Be careful. Make sure you pray before your spirit travels while you sleep, so you can have a Holy Ghost protection while you travel. I gotta go, you guys. I'm really tired. Talk to you later. Bye.